Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I am your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, and with me today, I have the lovely Kristine Goad. Kristine Goad. I just asked her about that, and I said it wrong. So I am going to tell you a little bit about her. Kristine is the Surfing Your Edge coach. Her mission is to help you break out of your reality-sized version of yourself so you can live the bigger, bolder, badass life you were born for. She leads clients on adventure retreats, including the annual Surfing Your Edge experience, an 8-day retreat for women over 40 to get out of their comfort zones and find themselves and their passion again through tropical adventures in Panama. Her signature program, Bigger, Bolder, Badass, is a 6-month choose-your-own-adventure group experience to help you fall in love with the life and be the you were always meant to be. Kristine coaches her clients around mental fitness and mindset, flow, creativity, and peak performance aging. She is the author of the memoir, Your Mileage May Vary, and a contributor to the book, Create Positive Change Now. Overcome negativity to create a life you love. Kristine, welcome.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled to have you. There's so much to talk about, but first I'd love to, for anyone that doesn't know or is maybe not be familiar with you, I just read a little bit about you, but I would love it if you could just take a few minutes and tell us a little bit more about you and how you sort of came to where you are now.
Yeah, okay. Basically, I had a hard time figuring out which box I fit in. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology as a natural science. I wanted to get a biology degree, but they made me cut up animals in order to do that. And I said, no, thank you. So we did psychology as a natural science. Then I went and got a master's in professional writing, and I did work as an environmental fundraiser, and I did administrative work. And then for 10 years, I supported an artist who was also a children's book author and illustrator. I did her back-end office management, helped her bring her ideas into the world kind of thing. And as I was trying out all the different boxes, I realized that none of them really fit, right? It was like, well, you can use this part of yourself over here and this part of yourself over here. But if you really want to bring all of yourself to the table, I finally realized I had to create my own box, right? A Chrissy shaped box.
I love that. Let me stop you for 1 second there, because you're saying that you're trying all of these different things, and for most people that might be like a sales position or maybe like a retail position, but the things that you're trying here are like huge important careers, right? So you had all of these different boxes, as you said, but each one could have been a lifetime career. So,
yes.
Right? So I'm curious, and you can continue on I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just curious how it was that you chose all those different things, trying that box out, and then it didn't work, realizing, okay, I need to maybe combine all these things and make my own box. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. There was also beach rangering in there, and so a little bit of forest rangering in there, and so, and working with kids and elementary school kids and creativity and nature and all this stuff. I just wanted, I think, here's the deal. I think what really happened was sometime in my late 40s, I came to the understanding that my purpose on the planet is to help people fall in love with the planet, right? What I really want is for us to find our place, humans to find their place in life on this planet and start working in harmony with the planet. So I think I came to the realization that I really just want to help people fall in love with life and with the other living creatures that we share the planet with. And so I started realizing, I don't know, there was advocacy work in there was some education work in there was some creativity work in there. And so I was playing around with all of the little different pieces. And at some point, I realized when I was working for the artist, I was able to work for her longer than for anyone else. I moved around a lot and was a hiring manager's nightmare, because I would show up with this resume that they did not know what to do with. So what I learned from working with her was that she would come to me with an idea and she wouldn't know how to do it, and I would help her figure it out, right? Like, she wanted to have a children's book translated into Spanish and made into a coloring book. So it was a Spanish language coloring book. And so I had to go and figure out how to find a translator and how to find, all of these different, and then we created an app where she could have people color her black and white drawings on their iPad. And this was before apps were really something that you could do drag and drop now. So anyway, so I realized that I was really good at helping her figure out how to do things that felt impossible, and that I was most happy when I didn't know what to do next, right? When I was in the middle of some big scary thing and like didn't know how to get there, how to get to the end. That was where I was thriving. And so that's how I finally came to create the Surfing Your Edge coaching business, because I love being in over my head and I wanted to help other people learn to love that too and know how to navigate it when they were there. Does any of that make any sense?
Absolutely. And I want to ask you more about that, the feeling of being in over your head. A lot of people would be like, I hate that feeling. I
Yeah.
feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to go next. So how is it, explain how it is that you love that feeling and how it makes you thrive.
I just kept creating little adventures for myself because I couldn't figure out the career path that was going to satisfy it. My career path wasn't satisfying my needs. So I was creating all of these little adventures for myself. And when I was 29, I went on a cross-country bike trip with the American Lung Association. And we started in Seattle, Washington, and went for 48 days and ended in Washington, D.C. And that was I'm going to figure out, the universe is going to whisper in my ear who I am and what I'm supposed to do on that trip. But I was 29, overweight, asthmatic, didn't own a bike when I signed up, and had never ridden more than like 20 miles in a day. So I'd done a little bit of preparation, but not enough. I mean, it's amazing for a novice to figure out what it takes to be able to do that ride. So that was like my first big leap into being in over my head. And then another thing came up. I don't even know where this came from, but I heard about something called witch camp. And I was like, ooh, I'm not a witch, but I'd love to know more. And so I wrote to them and I'm like, I'd really love to write an article about witch camp. Can I come as a freelance writer and do an article? And they're like, sure, as long as you're willing to fully participate. And so I went and dove into this world of, energy and people talking about just dragons and all kinds of amazing things and fairies. And so I don't know, I wanted an adventurous life, and I have just created adventures for myself that have taken me to the edge of my comfort zone, because that's really where the aliveness is, right? That's where you grow and where you get to what comes on the other side.
Yeah,
So
and learn too, I would imagine, right? learn more
Yeah,
about yourself. I love that
absolutely.
so much because so you went to school. We were talking about this before we recorded, but you went to school at University of Michigan, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you said that you studied psychology. That was you get a degree in psychology. So where
Yeah.
did all of this other knowledge come from?
Um,
Right? I mean, is it all related? I mean, I can see how the coaching aspect, I'm sure you use your psychology degree quite a bit with that, but like all of the other things that you were doing, I'm just curious how you knew to develop an app, for example.
oh, I had to hire somebody. The hardest part was figuring out the language to talk to this person who spoke a language I didn't speak. That was the hardest thing. So yeah, basically one of the things I learned in my psychology degree, I took a course on learning to learn. And so I think that knowing how to learn something new is my biggest skill, right? Like I
Yeah.
know I know what to go look for if I don't know how to get, I also have the ability to see like where we are and where we want to go and hold the big picture. And I may not know all of the steps, like how to do all of the steps along the way, but I can kind of see them. And I realized pretty early on that that is not necessarily something everyone can do. Um, so yeah, just constant learning. And Barbara Scher, I don't know if you know her,
No.
um, Sher, she was a fabulous writer, and she talked about scanners, people who are always scanning the horizon for the next exciting thing. And other people call them, Renaissance people or multi-passionate people. And I think I'm just one of those people. It's like, oh, that's cool. Let me go learn about that. And, oh, that's cool. And, it just all goes with my crazy resume.
I love that. No, I can relate to that though, actually, because I'm a habitual learner, online courses and things like that. So I can kind of relate to that. But I just find it interesting that you ever done any writing before? You asked to do an article on this witch camp.
Oh, yeah, I had a master's in professional writing and had been an
Okay.
editor, an associate editor of a local trade magazine, and
Oh, okay.
had done some small things. And but yeah, they didn't ask to see any samples. They just said,
They
okay,
just
sure.
appreciated the attention, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's great. So then tell me now, I want to segue a little bit to the idea of the podcast is born or made.
Mhm.
And so you had all of these other career experiences. Did you ever think that you would end up an entrepreneur?
No,
No.
absolutely not. I mean, I my family, my dad started a business when I was in college. But it was a business, it was a dry cleaners, and it was, a business that somebody could teach you how to do and help him set up, and told him what equipment to buy. And after that, it was up to him to, make sure that customers came and stayed. But no, I didn't have any real entrepreneurial um, role models in my life, except for my dad's dad was always making things and selling them. But no, I mean, I didn't. I thought I was going to be a scientist or a writer, or a science writer, or doing something advocacy wise and for the environment, I think. Or yeah, I don't know. So I think it was 2005 when I started realizing that there was something called digital nomads, and people that could move around the planet and work. And and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And I had no idea what the business was going to look like, but I started following coaches trying to learn what it might look like to have a digital business.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love how everything just sort of fell into place for you, though. And I would love to hear because I mentioned it in your bio, and it's so interesting to me about your retreats and how that came to be. How did that fit into everything? And that must have been, I can't even imagine how you did your first one, how you put all that together. So can you talk about
Oh
that?
my gosh, yes. That talk about being in over my head.
I
Um,
bet.
I had a very fledgling coaching business at the time. I started in 2015 when my husband changed jobs and we had to move out of North Carolina to Virginia. And I said, okay, this is my opportunity. I don't know what I'm starting, but I'm starting something. So I started a little micro coaching business, and I played around with that for about 3 years. And the cross-country bike trip that I mentioned was coming up on the 20th anniversary of that. And that thing scared me so much when I did it. And I wanted to do something big and scary to commemorate the 20th anniversary. But I didn't have, another summer to go off and, ride across the country. So I was thinking about the scariest thing that I could do. And I've always been afraid of open water. And I had tried to work on that fear by becoming a triathlete and swimming in, Lake Washington and things like that, with varying degrees of terror. But it seemed like surfing was the thing that would be like the scariest thing I could do. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to take a group of people and learn to surf out in the water, so that and take what we learn about ourselves as we're dealing with that that new experience, take what we learn from that and bring it home and use that information to change our lives once we get home. Because I don't know how actually I do know how I know this. Life-changing life-changing trips don't necessarily change your life unless you come home and do the work to actually make the changes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And after the cross-country bike trip had ended, I fell into a major depression that lasted about 3 years because I didn't hear the universe tell me who I was supposed to be in the world. Actually, I did. It kept saying, be you. And that was not a box. I was looking for a box. Like, what box do I jump in? Tell me what box. When I get off this ride, I will go get a job in that box and I will be happy and fulfilled. So that was my question. And the universe was like, oh, just be you, just be you. And I'm like, being me is not safe in the real world, right? I can be safe being me on this little microcosm that's moving across the United States. But how is it safe to really be me in the real world and say what I really think and be who I really am? And so I was super depressed. And as I was sitting in my living room floor, writing out, what a retreat, taking people to learn to surf, and then coming home and doing a coaching program with them and creating the Surfing Your Edge experience, I just got chills because I realized that what I was creating, this program, was what I needed when I got off that bike trip. I needed somebody to help me take all of that information I had learned about myself on that bike ride and integrate it so that I could fit into the bigger world in a way that was satisfying and rewarding. And nobody was there to help me. Nobody was there to say, okay, now you know all of these things about yourself. Let's make a life that looks like this and uses all of that. And it just wasn't there. So I realized that I had spent the last 20 years really looking for this thing that I just created.
That's amazing. So the universe did tell you what you needed to hear, but it wasn't what you wanted to hear at the time.
It didn't make sense. I didn't know what to do with the information. If I had
Yeah.
asked a different question, that answer might have made sense. But, what box do I get in? Oh, be you. It's like,
Yeah, because maybe you don't fit in a box. You're too,
Right.
yeah, you're too much for a box.
Exactly.
That is so cool. So was it you said you had a small group of people you were coaching. Were those the people you took on your first retreat, or?
No. And that's the other funny thing is that at first I thought, well, I was working for at this, had also taken a job working remotely for an online company. And I had the most amazing colleagues there. And I told them about this idea. And I'm like, I want to do something like surfing, but it can't be surfing. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, because I'd be terrified and I can't be a leader and be terrified. And one of them said, oh, yes, you can. And so once I realized that I could be terrified and be a leader, it became the surfing thing. And no, none of my regular clients wanted to go with me. And I started putting out little things on the internet looking for clients who would consider this, and nobody even seemed to see them. So I realized that I had to work on my mindset. I had to show up as the person who could lead this retreat before I would get anybody to say yes. So I had to suddenly step into, yes, I can do this, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm way in over my head. I had someone, oh, I'm telling the story so poorly. I had gone to a 3-day coaching event, and I had met someone there who was an American expat, and she lived in Panama. She heard me say in front of the whole group that I wanted to create this Surfing Your Edge experience. And she sought me out afterward, and she's like, I had said I wanted to go somewhere like Costa Rica because I loved the whole natural nature thing.
Yeah.
She's like, come to Panama. She's like, there's even more biodiversity. I've pioneered the whale watching industry there. We speak English, we use the American dollar, it's perfect. Come to Panama. And so within 8 months, I had put it all together, and we were on our way. And I had my very first client. All she did was like comment on one of my posts. It said, do you need one last adventure before summer ends? And she's like, oh, that sounds cool. And I got her on a call, and she's like, oh, but I'm a single mom, and I have a 15-year-old son, and I've never left him before, and I don't even know who I'd leave him with. And I couldn't possibly tell anyone that I was spending, this money on myself to go on a trip and leave my kid at home. And I don't have a passport. And within a matter of weeks, she had a passport. She had found someone to take care of her kid. She didn't tell anyone she was going, aside from her sister. And she and I and Anne, the woman who I'd met at the conference, the three of us went and just tried it out together. Just went and all got on surfboards and tried out the hotels. And she was my first guinea pig, and she has come on every retreat ever since and is the little engine that keeps me going. So yeah, I just needed one person to believe in me.
That is so awesome. So what is it now, like in comparison back then to now, what is a retreat like? It's 8 days, right? Is that what I read?
It's 8 days. We fly in on a Saturday, and we spend the first 2 days at an eco resort outside Panama City. It looks over this lake that comes off of the Panama Canal that was created when the Panama Canal was created. And it looks onto this mountain, with Rainforest Mountain. And so in the mornings, you can hear the howler monkeys on the mountain getting off their trees and moving to their next tree for the day. And you can see the parrots all come back at like 6 o'clock and fight for space in the trees in our little eco lodge. And we go out on this little safari with this little Jeep. We drive around the property looking for animals and see caiman and capybara and birds and things like that. So we're there for 2 days, just getting really kind of out of our heads and relaxing into being in a new place. And then we drive into the heart of Panama, and we stay at another little eco lodge on the Pacific coast, and we take 4 days worth of beginner surf lessons on this very beginner beach. It's very shallow and sand, and we have certified instructors who are so kind and patient. I'm like, you have to, when we were hiring them, I'm like, you have to understand, you're going to be working with women who are over 40 years old, who probably never even thought of themselves as surfing. And they're just doing this because it sounded fun, right? So you have to be really patient with us, and they're fabulous. And the first time I went, I actually was terrified of the waves and threw a little fit, just like, I'm not doing this.
Oh my goodness.
So we do that, and then we have a day where we go snorkeling around Koiba Island, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site where there used to be a prison on all of these islands, and so there was no development, and there's just amazing wildlife and coral and monkeys, and it's just a beautiful day. And then we spend our last night in historic Panama City. And last year I introduced a new hotel to us, which is the Sofitel Legend, which is this beautiful French hotel in a historic building, but it's luxury. So after we've done all of the nature stuff and gotten, sandy and sweaty and all of that, we get to come stay in an air-conditioned French hotel in the middle of the oldest part of Panama City, and it's just fabulous.
Oh, that is so cool. How many people typically come on one of these retreats?
They've been pretty small. This year I would love to take even 6 people, just
Oh, wow.
because
Okay.
we
So
keep
it's
it
been
really,
small.
yeah, we keep it small because when we come home, we continue with the coaching and the accountability, and we're like this little microcosm that continues working together. Because like I said, I want it to actually change your life. So we go and get really close and learn a lot about each other, and then come home and continue to support each other as we make the changes in our lives that are going to really help us get out into that bigger, bolder, badass life we want.
That is so cool. That it's just such a unique thing. I mean, I love that you picked surfing because it was something that was super scary to you. That's really cool. For me, it would be scuba diving.
Yeah, I that one kind of freaks me out too.
Yeah, no, I'm good. But I love how you facing fear is not something that you shy away from, which I
Right.
love because I have actually a good friend who I interviewed. I don't know if you know Linda Sunshine West. Do you know her?
Yes, I do.
Do
I've
you
interviewed
really?
you. Yes.
Yes, I interviewed her a while back, and she has a thing where she faced a fear a day for a
Mhm.
year, which I just love that because fear, for lack of a better word, just cripples a lot of people. And so women who aren't afraid to face fear are impressive to me. So I will say that.
Yeah, I would say there's fear there. But it's like the way I think about fear now is that all of those feelings that make you think you're afraid could also just be excitement, right? They're telling you that you're on the right road. A lot of times we feel fear and we see a stop sign that says, okay,
Mhm.
turn around, go back. And
Yep.
instead, I like to look at it as a guidepost that's like, okay, you're feeling nervous here. That probably means you're on the right road. If you keep going forward, you're going to get to something really good. We don't necessarily know what it is,
Yeah,
but keep going.
I love
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me about your book now. When did you write your book? When did that fit into everything? And what gave you the idea to write it too?
Your mileage may vary is a joke from the cross country bike trip, because we would get up in the morning and they would give us a map, and then there would be all of these turn directions and like go this far and turn left onto this street and all of that. And they would say, it's going to be 88.9 miles. And then you'd look at your odometer at the end of the day and it would have been like 97.5, right? It was never the 88.9. It was always more, never less, always more.
Right.
And so we started this joke about your mileage may vary. And so um, I came home and got super depressed and wrote a memoir about that cross country bike trip. And it was me being fully me, right? Like I was not I was not a perfect cyclist on that road, on that trip. I got in SAG vehicles and I had asthma attacks and ended up in hospitals, and I had way too many flat tires, and I made, choices. There were just days when I was like, I'm not doing this, and I got on the bus. And there were other people on the ride who were like, we called them every friggin' inchers. They were EFI, right? They felt like I didn't tell you this part. This was the biggest cross-country bike trip in American history because we were going for 1,000 people. We ended up with about 730 cyclists on this trip. And so the EFI crowd really thought that all 730 of us needed to ride every friggin' inch of that trip in order for the trip to be successful. And they really felt like my performance somehow impacted their experience, which I thought was crazy. So I wrote this book about being a completely imperfect human being on a bike trip that I had no business being on, and the decisions that, for better or worse, that I made, and all of the lessons that I learned along the way.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm curious though, were you by yourself? I mean, I know there were other people, but was there anybody else that you knew with you?
I didn't know anyone when I signed up for it. We met on this was like 2000, this was 1998. So we didn't really even have websites. We had like listservs kind of thing,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So we were meeting each other, people from around the country that way. And then I was in Washington State. I was living in Washington State. And so we would meet in Seattle. The Washington writers met a couple times in advance of the trip. So I kind of knew a couple of them. I like recognized their faces, but no, I really knew no one until day 2, when suddenly we just like all knew each other completely. It was like we're doing this crazy thing, and so bonds were just like that. I mean, it was just like you felt like you knew them forever. It was
Right.
crazy.
So what was it that made you embark on that journey? You keep saying you had no business being in the race. What was it that made you say, okay, I might not be that experienced, but I'm going to do this anyway?
It was the adventure. It was the adventure. And I was 29 years old. I was looking at 30, and 30 terrified me. I still didn't know what I was supposed to do with my life. And I really did think that getting on that bike would give me plenty of time to like hear the voice and to get clarity and
Yeah,
to
yeah.
come home and say, okay, you're heading into 30, use your next 30 years doing this.
So it
That's
was like a
really
soul searching type
it
of thing,
absolutely was. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious, when you say you ended up in the hospital because of your asthma, how did you get back into I'm assuming not everybody waited for you. Like, so how did that work?
They took me in on an ambulance, and then they were going to admit me. It was this tiny little hospital with one doctor, and we overwhelmed them. We brought in like 4 or 5 people, or maybe 8. I don't know. We brought in a number of writers for various things, and it just overwhelmed this little tiny hospital. And this doctor came in, and he's like, and he left. And the nurse is like, oh, I think he's going to want to keep you. And then like another doctor came in to help out on another ambulance, and he came in, and he was a younger guy, and he was a cyclist, and he's like, okay, I know you don't want to be here, so if you promise not to ride your bike until you get to Missoula, we were in the mountains. He's like, wait till you get through the mountains and you're in Missoula, and then you can get back on your bike. I'll let you leave. So I left. I like got on that ambulance and left as fast as possible because I did not want to be left behind.
Wow. That's funny. So how did you get through the mountains?
We had SAG vehicles, so we had support and gear vehicles. They were vans, and that would pick up riders with problems along the route, and we also had a couple of school buses that actually went, because there were days when, like, we ran into a freak snowstorm at the end of June and needed buses to get us off the mountain. So luckily we had buses, and I could just ride the bus.
Wow. What an adventure. So let's think back to when you were like little Kristine. Were you always doing adventures and facing fears when
No,
you were young?
No. I was the good girl who did everything she was told, was scared of everything. I read and wrote. That was all I did. I studied, I read, I wrote. Um, I twirled a baton and I played the flute, but
I twirled the baton.
oh, cool. But
Yeah.
that was kind of the extent of my adventure, right? And I don't know if it was the reading all the books. I think I wanted a really interesting biography when I died, right? I wanted to be the person who had scaled this mountain and, crossed this ocean. And so I don't know where it came from.
That's awesome. But
My
it's
sister,
like, what? Oh, go ahead. What?
I was just going to say, my sister thought I was the most boring thing in the world.
How
She really
many
wanted a brother.
how many brothers and sisters did you have? Do you
I
have?
just had one little sister. Yeah.
Okay, so you're the oldest. Yeah. Do you ever read those choose your own adventure books?
Yes, those were amazing.
That's what I thought of when I read your bio, because you said choose your own adventure. But that's just funny how we end up where we end up, because that's why I kind of dove into the topic of this podcast. It's like born or made, because as a kid, I never really fit into any box either. And it wasn't until, I started my own company and I started doing my own thing that I really felt comfortable, And
Right.
so thinking back as a little kid, I remember, uh, things that I would do that would hint to that, like, selling seashells to the neighbors, or,
Ah,
having like a play in my backyard. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things were the things that I always ended up doing. So, but then you try to be corporate world and have a regular time punching job, and it just doesn't match with our personalities. So whether we're born or made, we end up where we're supposed to be, I guess is my point.
right. Absolutely. And you're
Yeah.
right. Maybe we were born entrepreneurs, just nobody clued us in until
We
later.
didn't know, right? Because that's the thing. At our age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 51. So in school, it was never really fostered, hey, be your own business owner. It was just never talked about. So if we were born, we didn't realize it until after, when we were introduced to what it would be like, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, lastly, I want to ask you about the collaboration book you did,
Mm.
and how that came to be, and what was that about?
That was with the lovely Sherry Mers, who still hosts and publishes collaboration books, several
Okay.
a year. Um, I was in her first one. She's an amazing person. If you haven't met Sherry, I should put you in touch with her.
Yes, you
Um,
should. Yes.
she had a regular life until she retired, and then she started writing, and she started ghost writing. Um, and she wrote an incredible number of words in like the first year or two, published like 13 books for other people. Ghost wrote other 13 books for other people, became an editor, then started her own publishing house. And I actually met her through my contact in Panama, Ann Gordon. She was during the pandemic, and couldn't take people on retreats. So she started doing virtual retreats. And I
Oh,
was her backup person for that, doing all of the behind the scenes Zoom stuff. So Sherry signed up to come learn about virtual retreats with Anne, and that's how we met. So yeah, I was one of her first guinea pigs on learning how to put together a collaboration book and how to market it, and um, put it together with a summit and do all of the fun things that now a lot of different people know how to do.
yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. How long ago was that you did that? That was during the pandemic, you said, or
Um, I met her during the pandemic. I think it was 2021, the end of 2021, that the book came out.
okay, cool. Any plans to write another book?
I have two. I've got a business book in mind, and or a bigger, bolder, badass book in mind. And then I'm in the middle of a young adult novel, which I've never written a young adult novel before. But if you've got another few minutes for a little segue, after
Yeah.
we did, after the book, the collaboration book came out, that came out in, I think it was December of 2021. I started thinking, I realized that Charles Dickens had written A Christmas Carol and self-published it, written, illustrated, and published A Christmas Carol in about, he started in mid-October. He had the book in people's hands the week before Christmas and was completely sold out. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to work with a group of writers to see if we could do the same thing? So I started the Dickens project the next year and convinced 5 people to try to write a book in 6 weeks. Write and publish a book in 6 weeks. So I got halfway through my young adult novel and kind of then let it fall because we didn't get it. None of us got it done. We all were a little too ambitious, but it was fun. I like doing experiments, crazy
Yeah,
experiments.
that's fun. I love that. So you're gonna pick it back up, or are you gonna finish it?
Yes, I am. I'm thinking that I can start writing again in September. I've got to get through. The retreat happens in August, and we'll be back into a regular coaching mode in September, and
Yeah,
can start doing it then.
great. That's great. So, that kind of answers my next question, which is what's next on the horizon for you? So your retreat is in August. Is it too late for people to sign up for that, or?
It is not too late. It is not too
Okay.
late. Got a couple of spaces left, and we would love to have you. Love to talk to you about whether it would be a good fit. Um, so that's happening. Bigger, Bolder, Badass is also starting in July. That's my 6-month Choose Your Own Adventure program. And it's really for people who want to do the work, but they don't want to go on the retreat, or they can't leave their family or their kids or
Got
whatever.
it.
So we do 6 months at home instead, and everybody chooses their own adventure. It can be something that you stay home and do. Like last year, I took singing lessons as my adventure because I was terrified of making noise in front of anybody who might hear me. I had another person who started drawing every day and sharing their drawings online just to kind of get used to having people look at their work. And then I had the most amazing person decided he'd had a symphony playing in his head, a theme for a symphony playing in his head since he was about 9 years old. And he finally sat down and wrote his symphony, and it's a complete symphony, and it's actually under consideration by his local symphony for performance. So,
Wow,
you get to do whatever crazy thing comes to your mind.
that is so cool. Like
Yeah.
he knew how to write music?
He's a music professional, and he's written smaller things, but he'd never
Oh,
written a
okay.
symphony before.
But still,
So
that's amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So we did that, and then the other thing that I'm playing with is I want to start a mastermind that will focus on all of the surfing your edge concepts, but also taking it a step further, where we're working on getting into flow and peak performance aging, and not just taking you know not just assuming that our bodies are going to continue to degrade as we age, like learning how to really work with them so that we can stay vibrant and be an 80-year-old entrepreneur who's still loving life and not even thinking about retirement.
I love that. And that's so relevant right now because people, I mean, the old saying that, 70 is the new 50 or whatever it is, but it's so true now that the women, especially, I feel like are just pushing it well into later ages more so than ever before. So I love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome. And you do have a free gift for my audience, correct?
I do. It's a 7-day challenge that will help you let go of the stories from your past and really embrace a bigger vision for your future. even if you don't necessarily know what that looks like right now, just something that's bigger and bolder and pulling you forward. One of the people who took my live event with the same name, it's called Ignite 2024, said that I blew the lid off of possibilities. So that's what I hope this little 7-day challenge will do, is help you blow the lid off of possibility and see what is out there for you.
Awesome. And I will put the details for that challenge in the show notes. And then finally, I end every podcast with just a few random questions that help us get to know you a little bit better. And the first one, I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this, but let's see. If you were given the opportunity to go to space and walk on the moon, would you?
Probably with a lot of terror in my belly,
I
but
was
yes.
going to say probably yes, right? Because you'd be
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. If you had the opportunity to have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. It's a toss-up between E.O. Wilson, who was a naturalist who studied ants, or Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and I think really was kind of the turning point for me becoming this kind of off on the edge kind of person.
I love that. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but Neil Diamond wrote the music for that when they turned it into a movie.
Oh
And
no.
I'm a huge Neil Diamond fan. So Jonathan Livingston Seagull is meaningful to me too in a different way. But yeah.
Awesome.
And then lastly, what book has inspired you most in life? Business or fiction?
That is impossible to answer.
I'm looking at all the books behind you thinking,
oh my gosh. I think if we go all the way back to childhood, oh, now I can't even remember what it was called. Though, oh my goodness. I can't remember. They've even made a movie out of it, and I can't remember.
A children's book?
Yeah, it was a children's book. Oh my goodness. The Swiftly Tilting Planet was like the third book in this series. Oh my goodness, Madeline L'Engle. Oh my goodness.
Madeline L'Engle. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Madeline L'Engle. I know that name. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up right now.
I'm looking it up
I'm sure
too.
everyone
Here we
is
go.
wondering.
A Wrinkle in Time.
A Wrinkle in Time. Yes.
I think that was probably that one, and then Harriet the Spy was probably why I wanted to be a writer. And then most recently, I'm super obsessed with The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler, which is about flow and neuroscience.
I'm gonna write that down because I this is how I make my reading list.
Yes, The Art of Impossible. He talks about how having an impossible goal is really the only way to have an amazing life. He doesn't quite put it that way, but you have to do something that you aren't sure is even possible in order to really push your boundaries and see what's out there for you. So I think that fits right in.
Yeah, it does. Totally. Awesome. Well, Kristine, I am so happy that you came on today. This was such a great conversation, and I definitely wish you the best with everything you've got going on.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I've loved being here.
Good.